Hi, I'm Dr. Selima Hauber of Field to Fork Community Farm. During this time of the COVID-19 pandemic, many people have become aware of how vulnerable we are with respect to food supply. And as such, they've decided to take matters into their own hands and grow food in their own backyard. So I'm here today to give you some tips on how you can successfully grow some of your own vegetables. The first point to consider is location. Vegetable production here in the Bahamas is typically the winter and the spring. We are moving into the hot summer months, and many of the things that you enjoy during the winter are very difficult and nearly impossible to grow during our summer months. But if you choose the right location, you can improve your chances of success. So be sure to choose a location that is east facing, a location on the eastern side of your house or on the eastern side of a large tree would mean the garden would get morning sun during the time of the day when the temperatures are most favorable, and shade in the afternoon when the sun is highest and when the temperatures are hottest. This is very important as many crops, many plants, period, would and could experience stress due to the high levels of high temperatures, heat stress. And this would also affect the amount of watering that you would need to do. So by first choosing a location that is in the coolest part of your yard, ideally receiving 3 to 4 hours of morning sun would be essential to increase your chances of success. The next decision you would have to make is how you are going to grow your crops. Will you grow in the ground or in containers? Now, that decision is easily made by some people. If you're living in an apartment or a high-rise situation, a multiple-story building, then you definitely would have to grow in containers. So go to your local garden center and try to get as large a pot as possible. I would say 3 gallon size pot would be the absolute smallest for greatest success. You would need something as big as 7 gallons and higher. Now, this creates another problem in that the larger the pot, the more growing medium you would have to put in it, and therefore the heavier it becomes. So try to choose a size container that you could manage, that you could move easily when the time comes, but still having enough volume of soil, amount of soil for a vegetable plant to grow well in. So 3 gallon pot, absolute minimum for container gardening. You can also look at using other containers. If you already have like old washing tubs that are no longer useful, those are great containers to grow in. The 5 gallon water jugs, if you cut it so that the top off, so that you have like about a foot, at least a foot depth, that would be a good container to use also. So be creative, be innovative as much as you can, be resourceful, and choose the right container for your vegetables. Now, if you are able to grow in the ground, in the Bahamas, we don't have the luxury of deep, rich topsoils. In many places throughout the islands, the maximum depth of topsoil you would have would be about 6 inches, maybe 8 if you're lucky. So it would mean having to create raised beds. Now, a raised bed is simply just adding topsoil or growing media on the surface of the ground and containing it in a way so that when you plant in it and when you water in it, the soil does not run away or does not, you don't lose the soil. So methods to contain or to border a raised bed, you could use cement bricks. You could use large rocks some wood. The thing with wood that you have to be careful of, especially um, if you use logs harvested from your yard, that would be good. But certainly when you're looking at lumber, pressure treated lumber is not ideal because it's treated with chemicals that can be absorbed by your plants. But if you use non-treated lumber, then you only have the use of that wood for a limited amount of time. But you want to choose some means of containing the soil so when you plant in it and you need to water, that it would not, you won't lose your soil. So once you've chosen the method that you're going to use to grow, you need to have a good growing media. Now, container gardens growing in pots um, ideally would be it would be ideal to use potting mixes. Now, these mixes can be purchased from garden centers, from nurseries. They are lighter. They are more ideal for containers because they drain well, and their lightweight nature makes it easy for you to transport the container around. If you're growing in the ground in a raised bed, and you could get gardening soil also from nurseries. There are a number of companies around that are now selling, have been, topsoil, sifted topsoil, which is really attractive, dark in color, but still the soils here are not very rich, so you would have to amend these soils. Now, the ideal depth for raised beds, I would say 8 inches minimum. And once you've made your raised beds, the dimensions of the raised beds, think of it as being no wider than your arm can reach. So you can work on both sides of the bed easily, that you have access all around the bed. You also want to make sure that it is located in an area that is close to a spigot or water faucet, so you can easily water it um, using a hose, or if you have to, by hand, but you wouldn't have to walk all the way around your building in order to fill a watering can to water your garden. So eastern location that receives morning sun, afternoon shade, and near a spigot. Container gardens with a minimum pot size of 3 gallons, absolute minimum. Ideally, you would want to choose a container that's at least 5-gallon size or larger, or raised beds. Means of containing the soil in the raised beds would be cement bricks, just rocks that you find around your home, around your yard, um, logs from fallen trees. Just be resourceful. Now, once you've added your growing media into your containers or raised beds, then you would need to consider how you're going to amend the soil. You need to make sure that the soil is rich, that it has enough nutrients and organic matter to adequately support your plants. Now, one thing that we commonly recommend is the use of black cow composted manure, and that's easily found at numerous garden centers around the island. And it is simple to use. You just apply it to the surface of your soil and mix it in to a depth of about 6 inches. Make sure it's well incorporated, and that provides a good start for your plants. You can also use, by way of fertility, slow release fertilizer components really can also be found. Now, these would provide a steady release of nutrients to your plant each time you water. And they last for a number of months, so you would not have to replace them very often. Because our soils here are quite low in organic matter and fertility, I mentioned the black cow composted manure, which is a commercial product that can be bought in bags at nursery centers. You, there's also a local option that is a very sustainable option. Green Systems sells gardening compost, and they make their compost from yard waste that are gathered from a landscaping benches around the island. So this is organic material that would usually have gone to the landfill, and we know how how undesirable that is to send quite valuable organic matter to the landfill. So they intercept that organic matter and compost it at their site, and are offering for sale rich compost to backyard gardeners. So I encourage you to contact them to get your garden compost to enrich your soil. So far we've talked about choosing the right location. East facing, ideally, that would receive 3 to 4 hours morning sun, afternoon shade. If you're growing in container gardens, choose containers that are at least 3 gallon size, ideally 5 and larger. If you're growing in raised beds, you need to consider what you're going to use as a border to contain your soil. Make sure your gardens are located also near a spigot. And once you've acquired the growing media, make sure you amend it or you improve it to be able to offer your plants good fertility during the growing season, either by composted manure, which can be found commercially, or garden compost that you do yourself, or Green Systems has a great supply of compost. The next thing is what to grow. So as I mentioned, this is not the ideal time for vegetable gardening here in the Bahamas. Vegetable gardening in the Bahamas is done mostly in the winters. At Field to Fork, we plant seeds in September and begin harvesting in late October, November. Many of the garden vegetables require more, less stressful conditions than we experience in the summer. Our winters are low humidity, cooler temperatures, cool night temperatures. Summer, the exact opposite. We have high humidity, we have frequent rains, and the sun intensity is quite high, which is very stressful on plants. So we need to make a selection of vegetables that can perform best in these climatic conditions. So, by way of leafy greens, we all know how important it is to eat leafy greens, green vegetables. During the winter, we're able to grow kale and Swiss chard and collards and lettuce. During the summer, it's a lot more challenging to grow these items without protection. One thing I failed to mention, if you don't have space in your yard that's east facing that receives protection from the afternoon sun, it's not impossible to grow, but you would have to erect shade. I'm not sure where you would be able to find shade cloth on the island, but you would have to use shade cloth to protect your garden plants from the direct sun. So it's not impossible. It just means that you're probably going to have to spend a little bit more money to make sure that your summer gardening is successful. Now back to what to grow. So by way of leafy greens, Malabar spinach. Malabar spinach, I remember as a kid, my grandmother having pigs, and she would have Malabar spinach growing up on a fence, and that's what we would feed the pigs. So Malabar spinach is a tropical vine that is eaten as spinach in most of the tropical regions in the world. around the world. It's what we here at in the Bahamas know commonly as spinach, and that grows well in our climate. It's highly nutritious green, so that is easy. That would do well. You would need to provide support, so a trellis or a tomato cage or some sort of structure that the spinach can grow up on. One thing that Bahamians aren't as familiar as other West Indians are with eating is callaloo or amaranth greens. We Everybody's familiar with, at least heard of callaloo. Callaloo is another tropical plant that is eaten in around the world as a spinach. So that's another option to grow this summer that can withstand the hot temperatures and humidity. Purslane. Purslane is a common garden weed, and if you see it, you may be surprised to know that it's edible, but it's actually highly nutritious. It's the plant that has the highest source of omega-3 fatty acids, and that's very important in our diets, especially if you are currently eating a diet of highly processed foods. You need to increase the amount of omega-3 fatty acids in your diet, and purslane is the best choice um, plant source of omega-3 fatty acids. It literally is a weed. It grows like a weed. You can eat it cooked or raw in salads. Although if you cook it, you would be damaging some of those fatty acids. So try to eat as much of it raw as you can. Now, by way of fruiting crops, and by fruiting crops, that is anything that has seeds, those vegetables that can withstand and grow well or better than most during the summers are anything in the cucumber family. So we're talking melons, um, pumpkins, cucumbers, some squashes. These are crops that can do well in the summer heat. Um, Tomatoes. Tomatoes are our favorite garden vegetable. Right? Anybody who starts a garden, they're going to make sure that they have some tomatoes. Unfortunately, growing beefsteaks in the summer is nigh unto impossible. It's not impossible, but you will struggle. Tomatoes need low nighttime temperatures to set fruit and to produce sizable fruit, and we just don't have that here in the summers. Our lowest temperatures at night during the summer is 80 degrees. That's not enough. With a daytime high of 90 and an overnight low of 80, the tomatoes struggle. You may have better success with cocktail-sized tomatoes, and by cocktail-sized tomatoes, I mean cherry tomatoes, grape tomatoes. They would perform better than, say, a regular beefsteak tomato in the summer. So give it a try, but just know that the conditions are not ideal for growing tomatoes, beefsteak tomatoes in the summer. But try it, grape tomatoes and cherry tomatoes. Some hot peppers would make it well too during the summer. Eggplant can perform well in the summer. You could get fruit from that, which means you may have to learn how to cook eggplant. Eggplant is not commonly eaten in the Bahamian diet, so but if it grows well, we're gonna have to learn how to eat it during the summer. Okra. Uh, Everybody knows okra, okra soup, okra and rice, okra and grits. So okra is another tropical vegetable that can be grown successfully in the warm summer months. Pigeon peas. Let's not forget about that. That's pigeon peas are highly nutritious, and it grows well in our climate and our soils. So if you don't already have pigeon peas growing in your yard, plant some. And now moving on to some root crops that grow well during the summer. So during the winters at Field to Fork, we plant beets and carrots and radishes. I've never attempted growing those through the summer. During the summer, we actually plant a cover crop and we don't grow anything. But I will be starting a summer garden and attempting to grow some things with better control. So for if you desire root crops, here are some tropical root crops that grow through the summer that you will have success with. Cassava, of course. We used to eat in cassava. Shouldn't be a problem there, knowing what to do with it. Sweet potatoes. And the interesting thing with sweet potatoes is not only can they grow well during the summer, but the greens, the sweet potato leaves are also edible. So not only would you get the root, but you have a source of leafy greens by you can consume the sweet potato greens. Um, Eddies or eddos, tropical plant, they like a lot of water, but they do well in our heat. And in the summer when it rains quite frequently, they would thrive. So if you're not used to eating eddy or eddos, now is the time. Um, what else? I'm this summer, although as I said, I've never attempted to grow it through the summer. I'm going to give it a try because we have an area that's shaded, and maybe I could get the right conditions to try radishes. The reason I want to try radishes is because one, they are in the plant family that has really good phytonutrients. Radishes are in the brassica family or the mustard family, the cabbage family, with broccoli, cauliflower, mustards, arugula. This plant family is rich in anti-cancer properties. So I try to consume as many vegetables as I could in this family. And if you could eat it raw, the better it is, the more helpful it is to your body in fighting cancer. So I'm going to give radishes a try. Another reason why I like radishes, radishes are a really fast crop. They, from seed to harvest, 2 to 3 weeks, 3 weeks. So you can be eating nice, fresh, crisp radishes in no time if you give them a try. Now, those are some ideas of what you can grow. The next thing is, now once you have your plants in, you need to look out for pests and diseases. Now, another reason why production in the summer is not very common because of the temperatures, because of the humidity, because of the frequent rains, plants are under significant stress from those environmental conditions, and they are also under intense pressure of insect pests. We're talking aphids, whiteflies, thrips, all of these insects stress the plant or attack plants that are already stressed and are less able to fight off these insect pests. And you therefore lose productivity, and they also transmit viruses that could even further damage your crop and decrease your chances of having a successful harvest. So you need to be on the lookout. Be on the lookout for insect pests. Turn the leaves of your vegetable plants. Look on the bottom surface. A lot of them hide out on the bottom surface. Look inside the flowers to see if you see anything crawling around. Now, at Field to Fork, we use biocontrols or biopesticides to control our insects and diseases for that matter. We grow sustainably, we grow using organic methods. I do not recommend buying pesticides such as malathion, Sevin dust. They're not good for the beneficial insects that exist in your gardens. And these are insects that are around with the bad insects, but we want them because they eat the bad insects, and they help protect our crops. But if you apply certain chemicals to kill the bad guys, you inadvertently kill the good guys too. And some of the residues of these crops not only harm um, big insects, but they can harm the microbes in the soil. and the microbes on your plants that are also helpful. So as you're gardening, this is we're talking about the web of life. There are bad guys out there, but there are good guys too, and we don't want to inadvertently kill the good insects and the good microbes. So be selective with your pest and disease control measures. One excellent resource that I came across, it doesn't necessarily work for me as a commercial farmer because I am growing on acres. Um, but for you, the home gardener who may have 110 by 3 bed, this would be a great resource. The website is called OISAT, OISAT.org. And I think it's the Online Information System for Tropical Agriculture, or Agriculture in the Tropics. Yeah, Online Information System for Agriculture in the Tropics. And this site, if I'm not mistaken, was developed by a German company. And it has a number of recipes, kitchen recipes, using things that you would already have in your kitchen, already have in your in your bathroom cabinet, like Epsom salts or um, hot peppers, garlic, onion, ginger. All of these vegetable sources have already in them phytochemicals that repel, deter, or kill some of the harmful insects and microbes. So check out that website for information on kitchen sprays, or sprays that you can produce in your kitchen to control some insect pests. OISAT.org, OISAT.org. Now, pest and disease control is something that has to happen daily, especially during the summer, to increase your chances of success. So every day that you go out and check on your plants and you may water, you need to watch them carefully, check underneath the leaves, check the fruit, get really familiar so you could tell when something is wrong. And then check out that website. If you notice a problem, you can search for the pest or the disease, and then it'll bring up the recipes that you could make to help keep that pest or disease under control. Another thing is weeding. Weeds will compete with your plants for the nutrients in the soil, for the water in the soil, for the sunlight. So make sure you stay on top of the weeds. With a small container garden or raised bed, it really shouldn't take that much time, especially if you visit your garden daily. So we talked about maintenance with respect to insect pests and diseases. Now let's talk about watering. How often should you water, and when is the best time to water? Ideally, you should water in the morning. The plants don't really need to take up water. They don't start drinking water until they are photosynthesizing, or until the sun is actually up and they're doing the work of making the food. So water early in the morning, just before the sun rises, or as well, not even that early, at first thing in the morning. Like I would say during the summer we have first light at about 6 a.m. You could water at 7:30. Don't wait too long. Much after that, then you increase your chances of your plant experiencing drought stress. And once a plant experiences drought stress, it would experience obstacles to reaching optimum performance, peak production. So try not to let your plants dry out. So water first thing in the morning, say 7 a.m. How much to water? That is a big question, because especially during the humid and hot season, it is possible to overwater. In the summer, we frequently get daily rains. That's not uncommon, around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So To decide if you need to water, stick your finger in to the soil to about the first joint. And if you feel that the soil is dry up to the first joint in your finger, then you ought to water. If it's moist, if it's cool, hold off, right? We don't want to overwater. Certainly if you got rain overnight or the day before, always check to see if your soil is dry to the first joint in your finger. Now, how do you water? You make sure you apply the water directly to the roots or to the soil. By watering on the leaves, you increase the chances of diseases flourishing on, on, on the plants. You certainly do not want to water later in the day, um, if so that there's not sufficient time for the plant's leaves to dry off before it gets dark. Wet leaves into the night in a warm summer night means bacteria and fungal diseases. So make sure, sometimes we can't help it because rain showers come and overnight or late in the evening and the plant's leaves are going to be wet. That you can't help. But certainly, if you need to water by hand, apply the water directly to the soil and as early in the day as possible so that the plant goes to sleep with dry leaves. So I think I've covered just about everything you need to start and have a successful summer gardening. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I will give Donovan my email address that you can send email requests to, questions, or go to our Facebook page, Field to Fork Community Farm on Facebook, and throw out your questions, take pictures. There are a number of gardening groups going on Facebook now that are very supportive. Um, and you can share your successes, your failures, and get tips from other gardeners to see what they're doing. So be as adventurous as you can. The more you do it, the more you learn. The more you learn, the more successful you become. You may not have many successes, but you know what? This is the best time. You try it now. By the fall in September, when the temperatures become good for winter gardening, you start planting again then, and you would have a smooth winter backyard vegetable garden because you would have learned uh, and made mistakes and had some successes now. So I encourage you to just get your hands dirty, give it a try. You can't screw it up that bad, and you would definitely reap the benefits of having good, healthy, fresh food right from your own backyard. Dr. Selima Hauber here from Field to Fork Community Farm. Happy gardening.